Hello there. Time for another chess review, episode 6 of the Queen's Gambit Adjournment. We open the episode with Beth and Benny on their way to New York, and they play a blindfold game, and they rattle out some moves like pawn to king 4, pawn to queen bishop 4, etc. And they play the 11 fish. I lost track after that. Some of the moves didn't make sense, but for a chess player, this is normal. When you go on plane rides or long trips in a car, you might play some blindfold chess. So we arrive at Benny's place in New York. It's sort of like a chess cave, a basement with a chessboard. And you see some magazines, some game scores, some trophies. And this is usually what chess players do. They have their trophies and their books, somewhere on display. I think this is fairly normal. And we see Benny prep for a rook trade, perhaps. At this stage, we see them, talk about chess a lot. They talk about tournaments like the Hastings. Hastings is one of the most well-known open tournaments around, most historic one, and Borgov apparently played there. We see, the first chess position of this episode. They did play the 11 fish, but this position I found out to be from a game between Glikoris and Keres, which ended peacefully, but it seems like in the episode Beth is defeated. We then move to a scene where they say they improve on the analysis of Ruben Fine, who we see pictured here. And that was from the game Reshevsky against Stolberg. We see now how the game actually played out. Reshevsky is white, and he blunders a piece here, queen takes d2. And Stolberg from Sweden makes the time control and wins against Reshevsky from the USA. However, Reshevsky could have taken on a7, and after queen d1, king g2 takes, queen b8, white is actually winning, and this is the improvement that Beth is suggesting to Benny. We see that time really blows by the parking tickets that they're lining up. Here, Benny starts to talk about the Soviets, why they're the best, and he mentioned that they work together, like in adjournments and stuff. And well, Bobby Fischer used to mention that, and the Russians, they would often, make a draw between themselves and then try to pound on the others, especially Fischer. So this is accurate. Then Benny had some friends over. At first, I thought it was a rook trade party, but then, one of the friends starts to show Beth a puzzle. Beth says she finds puzzles irrelevant because they rarely come up in games, but she agrees to do it. A mate in 3. Now notice the pieces. 4 on the green squares are on the board now. But then he takes like 6 sounds to set up the pieces, which doesn't add up, but that's a very, very, very minor complaint. The actual puzzle is quite nice, and the solution is king to d7. And now, if black moves the bishop, only one bishop move. Then knight to d6, and black can only move the bishop again, and then knight to e8, covering the g7 square and checking the king will give mate. Now if you move the king, again knight d6, and now there are 3 king moves. The king moves to f6, there's knight to e8 mate. If the king, we see that again, covering f8 and g7. If the king goes to h6, the knight takes f5, will cover the king and the g7 fleeing square. And finally king to f8, and knight to e6 will do the same. And this he solves in a matter of seconds, despite being, getting disturbed. But now for me, one of the highlights of the episode. They start to play a blitz simul, and as soon as I saw the start of this, this game, and especially this position, I lost it, After bishop d3, I'm like, okay, I know this position. Funny thing is, when I was preparing this episode, I was at the regular chess club, and there you will find the statue of none other than Friðrik Ólafsson, Iceland's first grandmaster. He was the president of FIDE, a very well-known figure in the world of chess and in Iceland. And when I saw this position, I got kind of excited to get this shout out to the legend of Icelandic chess. He played this game against Mikhail Tal in Moscow in 1971, and actually I called him and told him about this, and he was very happy to be featured in this series. So we see, glimpses of the game. Rook c8, he took on c8 and then mated him. Well, he was gonna mate him on the back rank, but Tal resigned. You can actually find more about this game on my channel. I will leave a link to this game where actually Frederick himself, at the age of, I believe, 82, is talking about this game. Great video, do check it out. I will leave a link. The other games in the simul were, well, the first one, Kasparov Kramnik, Ashashnikov, where after Rook h3, Kasparov set up this fantastic move, knight e6, and he won a very nice game. Eventually, the game reached this position, where Kramnik just played queen f8, and now bishop to d7 would win the queen, and this is where we see black tipping his king. The game actually ended after queen f8, Kramnik resigned immediately. The third game in the simul, the one against Benny, is actually one that has been used before in the series, and it's a game Kasparov against Van Willy. We saw it, I believe, in the episode in Mexico, where we saw the final position, which they used to give checkmate. But this was a very nice combination, ending in rook to e7, and that's where the game ended. Beth versus Benny, and Benny pays up, the big bucks. The next game I actually couldn't find in the database, and I was about to give up, but then I gave it another go, and I found this game, Furman against Vaganyan, which actually ended here, but in the episode they go for rook takes d4, which allows queen to e8 mate, so Furman against Vaganyan. The next game fragment is actually from a game between Georgiou and Kavalek, and we see this Suk in between move bishop e5, which won the game, before finally moving on to the final game, where Beth has white against Benny, and this time around it's a game between Balashov and Tukhmakov. We see this move knight h5, which is where the game ended, but in the episode we see rook g3 and bishop g7, queen to g7 being played out, and yeah, Benny is checkmated. The final game we see is not the most realistic. Of course Benny pays up, and it's the opera game, one of the most famous games in chess history. So I don't know much to this game, but this would never happen in a game between strong players. Notice that the board is set up wrong because they have H on the A file and the 8th rank on the 1st rank, but this is normal between strong players. When you get very strong, you will not look at the coordinates and it doesn't matter to you. So the Blitz simul finally ends. I'll add that a Blitz simul between strong players, it's very unlikely that a strong player will be able to defeat the 3 other strong players. But this leads to another trade of rooks between Benny and Beth, and in the post-mortem we learn that, well, some important things like people don't say check at the big tournaments, and they never lay their king down. But okay, now we are actually in Paris. This is where the series actually started, and yeah, we see this nice press conference and this scene where Beth is talking Russian. This is similar to Fischer. He learned Russian. We see that the time control, it's 40 moves in 2.5 hours. The time control used to be really long back in those days. This was later reduced to 2 hours, and today you have 1.5 hours, but you do have 30 seconds for each move, a so-called increment. Beth's first game in the tournament, we don't see much. We see it's a McCutcheon in the French. We see her play bishop d3. I didn't find much, but I would like to think that they had this game in mind between Bogolubov and Reti, where we had this excellent checkmate, queen takes f7, then rook 1 to g7 checkmate. We see a nice transition to the next game, and this one was actually based on Averbach against Toulouse. We see in the episode rook e1 and rook takes e1, but this combination, rook e8, splendid combination by Averbach. A great player, still alive, 98 years old today. Shout out to Yuri Averbach. The next fragment, we see the demonstration board, but it doesn't make sense. Beth is already a piece up, and knight g3 as played by the demonstration board was just a huge blunder of another piece. A rare error. Then we see this from the hotel room, again, position that doesn't make sense, and her moving the rook to h1 just, yeah, again, doesn't make any sense. Another slight error, we see Beth's opponent resign, and everything lines up as from a position in a game that Bobby Fischer played, except there is no queen on g3. So it's like Beth was a queen up. But then we see, yeah, this demonstration board, position where Borgov's opponent resigned, completely losing. I didn't find anything that resembled this position in the database. And now we move on. It's time for the last match, Beth against Borgov. She's studying in her room. And well, she shows up late. And we finally get the first scene from the actual series. This is the first scene. She shows up against Borgov. She's late. And we now find out that she's completely hungover. She does play well, e4, and we have the Sicilian, like Benny suggested. We have this Fischer social attack, as we see on the demonstration board. And we see more or less how the game is progressing as Borgov looks on. I just love Borgov. We see bishop h6. This happened in the game, as you can see on the demonstration board. And the game is progressing more or less like the game between Dominguez and Megoranto. Dominguez with black, actually. We do actually follow the game for a long time. Only game in the database that reached this position. Up until the point, well, we did a flashback right there with Benny talking about how to defeat Borgov. Up to this point, where in the actual game bishop c4 was played, but in the Borgov game queen to c7 was played. And yeah, we see the game progress until we reach a middle game, well, late middle game position where yeah, we have this great position for Borgov with the bishop pair. And yeah, these nice demonstration boards, haven't seen them before. We then don't see how the game continues. Another flashback until we see Beth a little worried about her position. As well, she's already a piece down and should resign, but she's worried here. She plays the move rook to b3, but Borgov, calm as always, plays bishop h4. He's about to mate her. We see her, yeah, visibly upset, and finally she sheds a tear as she is about to lose again to Borgov. So this is our last actual chess scene. We see Beth return home, and when she's there, she gets a phone call from Ed Spencer, a tournament director, who is played by Bruce Pandolfini, who was making a cameo. We see Beth's first opponent from her first tournament saying hi to her, but Beth is a little cold because of her addiction. And then, yeah, Pandolfini again. And he was indeed featured in the film Searching for Bobby Fischer, and he was played by Ben Kingsley in that movie. He's one of the most famous chess teachers in the United States, and he was, yeah, one of the main chess consultants on this Netflix series. But that's all for episode 6. I do hope you enjoyed it. I put a lot of work into this one. A lot of chess scenes, a lot of reference work. Again, I would really appreciate if you can, you know, show me some support by liking the video. And if you haven't, press the subscribe button. So only one episode to go. I hope to finish that one soon, and I see you then. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.